On this episode, we're going to explore how to instantly get the Hollywood aesthetic of photochemical film you've seen in famous movies with Dehancer, a game-changing film emulation and look development plugin. Whether you're shooting video or photo on a cell phone or professional-grade camera, this plugin is a must-have. It's available for all popular video and photo editing applications running on PC, Mac, and Linux, including the free version of DaVinci Resolve. There's also an iOS app as well. Check the description for more details and a link for submissions to Dehancer's COLORIST Awards. The first time I used Dehancer, I was immediately impressed how quickly I was able to achieve an analog film look that truly captured the essence of films I grew up watching on both 8-bit and 10-bit video. Dehancer is intuitively laid out, stable, and easy to use. It quickly became an essential addition to my color grading toolkit, and I believe it will do the same for you. I highly recommend this tool to aspiring filmmakers wanting to achieve a signature Hollywood-style look, infused with nostalgia. For content creators seeking to add a touch of visual flair to their videos, this is going to be your secret weapon. If you're serious about giving your videos a more authentic Hollywood film aesthetic, Dehancer is the answer. Let's dive in. I'll be using Dehancer in DaVinci Resolve Studio, but it works in the free version as well. Use the link in the description to download Dehancer and follow along. Go ahead and import your video and set up your timeline. I have an episode on project settings and timelines you can refer to. I'll be working in a color managed workflow and grade in a larger color space. Go to File, Project Settings, and select the Color Management tab. I'm going to show you two versatile color management workflows that you can easily adapt to your project using this plugin. The first color management workflow is the simplest to set up. Begin by setting color science to DaVinci YRGB Color Managed. Disable Automatic Color Management and select Color Processing Mode to HDR DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate. This allows us to grade in a larger color space. The output should be Rec. 709 with a gamma setting that matches your monitor's gamma calibration. For computer monitors, select Gamma 2.2. While professional panels calibrated to Gamma 2.4 should use that setting for grading in controlled environments. I'm screen recording on a calibrated computer monitor, so I'll choose Gamma 2.2. You'll still export to Rec. 709 with a Gamma of 2.4 because that is what YouTube is expecting. I'll explain the rendering process later. Now hit Save. Go to the color page and set the input color space for each clip. If you don't see the video clips, click Clips on the top left. I shot with hybrid log gamma BT709, so I'm going to select Rec. 709 scene, as we're grading in a scene-referred workspace. From here we can start grading. Now let me show you the second color management workflow, which provides more control over your footage, especially if you're working with video from the same camera. Again, set color science to DaVinci YRGB Color Managed. Turn off Automatic Color Management, but this time set the color processing mode to Custom. Don't get overwhelmed. Leave everything as is, but only change the following settings. Set your input color space to match your video's color profile. By setting the input color space here, you don't have to set it later like we did in the previous workflow, unless you have a clip that was shot in a different profile. Set your timeline color space to DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate and your output color space to Rec. 709 and corresponding gamma, then click Save. This second color management workflow is the one I will use for this review and tutorial. For those of you that prefer a node-based color management workflow using color space transforms, you can set your color science to DaVinci YRGB. Since we've already imported our video and specified the input color space, we can move on to normalizing our video for Dehancer. To save time, I've already done that at the clip level. Typically, I create my looks on the post-clip level. However, for this tutorial, I'll start my creative grade at the clip level using clip level shortcuts and then transition to post-clip for further refinement. I highly suggest referencing Blackmagic Design's free colorist training for recommendations on color grading pipelines in DaVinci Resolve. Here's a screenshot of what a typical pipeline would look like for reference. At the clip level, add a new serial node with Alt-Option S. Search for Dehancer in the library effects and insert it on the available node. If this is your first time running the plugin, scroll down to Options, click the disclosure arrow, and select Check Profiles. This will download the updated list of profiles for Dehancer. Also, click on Disable All Tools so we can start with a clean image. We'll enable each tool as needed. Set your quality accordingly. For modest systems, use Normal Fast. While we're on this tool, The License Info button opens a widget to view activation status and activate the license key. I like to be in full-page viewer mode, so I'll toggle that on and off with Shift-F. This gives me a better view of the clip and the plugin's controls. I highly suggest watching my episode on color grading shortcuts, which complements this workflow. To avoid being overwhelmed by all the other tools, collapse all the disclosure arrows. As a good habit, save your project, unless you have Live Save active. Dehancer's tools are laid out in a suggested order, which I'm going to follow, but deviate from once I choose the film stock. First, we need to set Dehancer's input. Since we're using a color-managed workflow, we set the input to our timeline color space. In this case, DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate. If you have a clip with a different profile, Dehancer lets you choose the camera, model, and color profile. After normalizing your footage, there are other ways to adjust exposure throughout the grading process using Dehancer. It's better to go over this now. Under Input, exposure compensation is technically applied to the source color conversion, yielding superior results compared to conventional exposure tools. You can use a slider for macro adjustment or click and drag in the value box for micro adjustments. Use this before other Dehancer effects are applied if needed. Raw file exposure should be adjusted in DaVinci's Camera Raw panel. The other place where exposure is applied is under the Print tool called Print Exposure. This mimics traditional film photography, adjusting exposure creatively. Its impact varies based on the selected profile, print media, and plugin settings. In short, input exposure is a technical exposure setting, while print exposure is a creative one. We'll set the other settings later. Let's select the film stock and film print in that order. In my opinion, these two settings get you more than halfway to that Hollywood aesthetic. The terms film stock and film print refer to two different stages in the filmmaking process, each with a specific function. Film stock is the raw, unexposed medium loaded into a camera for capturing images. It consists of a light-sensitive emulsion on a flexible base, traditionally made from cellulose nitrate, acetate, or polyester. Film stock is available in black and white or color, in various formats and with different ISO ratings, which determine its sensitivity to light. Film print, on the other hand, is a copy made from the original film negative or master, typically after editing and color grading. It's the final product intended for exhibition, whether in theaters or for archival purposes. Let's select the film stock first. One way to choose the film stock is based on the lighting conditions. The other is letting your eyes decide, which I prefer. But in some cases, it might benefit you letting the lighting conditions dictate the choice. You can search or use an AI chatbot to suggest film stocks for your lighting conditions if you're uncertain what to use. Whatever selection you make should impart a look that suits your intended vision. After fiddling around with this footage, I went with the Cinestill 800T. You can adjust the push-pull slider to vary the contrast and overall look. Here's a before and after. If you need to check for detail, you can zoom in by mouse scrolling and pan by middle clicking and holding down the scroll wheel while moving the mouse. To zoom out, hit Z. After you've selected your film stock, let's take a slight detour and open up the Expand tool and set the black and white points. These limits quote-unquote fit your image into the dynamic range of your timeline color space for adjusting the contrast of an image without affecting its color. This is particularly useful for film profiles that often lack contrast but have significant headroom for creative adjustments. The color mode option allows users to adjust the luminance component of an image without affecting its color. Refer to your waveform to avoid clipping. Throughout the grading session, you may revisit this tool more than once. Since the visitor center structure is the main subject in the scene, I'm using the false color to check my IRE levels, the color picker tool to help me minimize when the sky begins to blow out near the sun, and the scopes to check the overall exposure levels. Personally, I'm okay with blowing out parts of the sun-filled sky, and I'm using the clipping indication tool to double-check that nothing major has been clipped. Here's a before and after. Now let's set the film print. I'm going to select the ever so popular Kodak 2383 print emulation. Let's do a preliminary adjustment to the tonal contrast Then check the analog range limiter to redistribute the contrast and gain a slight bit of headroom for pushing the contrast creatively and safely. It also tames the highlights, which could be an aesthetic you want. I'm going to leave it off. Refer back to the input tool to adjust exposure, temperature, or tint if you need to. We'll defringe after we add that Hollywood magic with Halation and Bloom. This is optional, but at this point, you can create a new version with Controller Command Y and go back to film stock to try different emulations for comparison. You can cycle between versions using Control or Command B or N for previous and next versions respectively. Again, this too is optional, but once we have the overall look and compared versions, we can apply this grade to a group of clips in the post-clip level and continue working on the image there. Select your clips and add them to a new group. Copy the Dehancer node with Controller Command C, then disable it. With any clip in the group selected, switch to the post-clip level and add a node there if there isn't one already with Alt or Option S, and paste the Dehancer instance with Controller Command V. Now all the clips in the group have that look. As a side note, I avoid look development at the timeline level and reserve it for physical effects like grain because color grades will affect titles and rolling credits. Also, you may have scenes that require a different look. I'm just following the textbooks. Now let's add halation and bloom. The halation effect reproduces the photochemical phenomenon that manifests as a halo around high contrast or bright highlights, which give film that soft and nostalgic aesthetic. Each halation simulation profile has two versions, a standard emulsion and one with the anti-halation layer removed, labeled no remjet. The term remjet comes from the removable jet black layer of carbon black particles in a water-soluble binder that coats the bottom of cinefilm. On films with no remjet, halation is more pronounced. You can refer to the manual for details on the custom settings. A mask mode is included as a visual guide. I suggest turning down the lights in the room when using it. For a more accurate simulation of film, halation is often used in conjunction with the bloom tool, which I'll apply next. So far, here's a before and after. Bloom simulates a diffused glow effect that occurs around light sources in film photography. Dehancer offers various profiles for different film formats and custom settings. Again, there is a mask mode as well. Here's a before and after. Now we can go back to input and activate defringe if your image needs it. Fringing is an artifact that makes the edges of high contrast appear as if the colors are separating. Fringing is more apparent after adding halation and bloom. If the edges of objects look sharp with no color artifacts, then leave it off. We've gone from this to this in no time flat. Of course, you would fine-tune your look with the rest of the tools, but if you had to deliver a draft to a client fast, I have no doubt the client would feel they're getting their money's worth. Before continuing, let me double-check my exposure balance with Dehancer's clipping indication on this group to catch any major clipping before continuing. I'm just using the primary color wheels at the clip level. I don't expect to make big changes because in my experience, Dehancer does a solid job imparting a creative look within the bounds of natural aesthetic without breaking the image as you see. Although these are 10-bit files, I've had similar results with 8-bit files as well. After adjusting the exposure, I'll use the false color to make sure the clips look reasonably similar in visual intent before continuing. Your workflow will be unique, and so will your approach to using these tools. Don't be afraid to experiment and find what feels right, because there's no one-size-fits-all approach. Now let me briefly go over the other tools and apply them as needed. Then we'll add our finishing touches with some grain at the timeline level. The Film Developer tool emulates the analog film process by allowing users to customize a development recipe for their images. Contrast boost is similar to adjusting developer temperature and concentration in analog processing, while gamma correction controls the balance between midtones, shadows, and highlights. Color boost is a gentle saturation that distributes overall saturation that doesn't lead to clipping by limiting colors to remain inside the color gamut. When color separation value is reduced, saturation of the most intense colors is reduced first, while medium and low saturation colors remain almost unaffected. The film compression tool emulates the compressed tonal range of analog film to achieve a more film-like look. The impact parameter controls the degree of compression, while white point sets the clipping threshold. Tonal range determines the range of tones affected by compression, and color density controls the color intensity of the compressed highlights. I went over the expand tool earlier. Color head and print toning tools emulate the analog color correction and toning techniques used in photo enlargers and optical movie printing. You can adjust the color balance of an image using 3 complementary color pairs: yellow-blue, magenta-green, and cyan-red. The print toning tools allows users to add color tints to shadows, midtones, and highlights. The preserve exposure settings compensates for exposure changes caused by color corrections, while the impact slider adjusts the overall intensity of the effect. The film grain tool simulates the appearance of real film grain by reconstructing the shot based on local color and brightness characteristics and physical modeling of a film emulsion. It offers different grain profiles and custom settings. Halation and Bloom was explained earlier. The film damage tool offers profiles that simulate various types of film damage, including dust, hairs, scratches, and stains. You can use the extensive custom mode for controlling the individual modules. The film breath tool offers different profiles that simulate the accidental changes in exposure, contrast, and color that occur from frame to frame in film photography. The gate weave tool simulates the inconsistencies of frame alignment due to mechanical components progressing the film strip in cameras, projectors, and video coding devices. It offers different profiles and custom settings. The overscan tool simulates the process of scanning film, revealing perforations and additional area beyond the exposed frame. Vignette emulates the uneven exposure caused by lenses that darkens the edges of the image. Monitor, as you've seen, provides the false color and a clipping indication tool. Output is a global opacity slider for Dehancer's effect intensity. The LUT generator tool allows users to conveniently export the grading look created in Dehancer that you can load on a camera or to offload Dehancer CPU usage. I already went over options at the beginning. For the final touch, switch to the timeline level. Add a node if it doesn't have one already, and insert an instance of Dehancer. Once again, set the input to DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate, then go down to the options and click Disable All Tools. I'm only going to add grain and wrap things up. I like Dehancer's grain emulation algorithm better than other tools because it transcends traditional overlay methods by meticulously reconstructing images, integrating grain characteristics that result in a more authentic and dynamic physical appearance, where grain naturally evolves with varying exposure and color. To export my project as a Rec. 709 file with a gamma of 2.4, I go to Project Settings and set the output to gamma 2.4 and click Save. On the Delivery tab, I enter my custom settings. Then under Advanced Settings, I set the gamma tag to Rec. 709A. Lastly, I click Add to Render Queue, then Render All for uploading to streaming services. And I'm done. Before ending this episode, I want to go over the differences between LUTs and Dehancer when it comes to look development. LUTs offer static color transformations, while Dehancer's algorithmic approach emulates dynamic film attributes that imparts a dynamic color transformation frame by frame. This makes Dehancer essential for creating realistic film looks that are impossible to achieve with LUTs alone. As a bonus, there's a discount code in the description for all Dehancer products, except the iOS app subscription at the time of making this episode. But double-check the description for updates. You can also use PayPal credit at checkout for instant access to Dehancer and deferred interest for 6 months upon approval. This investment will quickly pay for itself. I found Dehancer to be a fun and effective look development tool that delivers instant and satisfying results with minimal settings, complementing rather than replacing existing tools. I had no crashes, even on complex projects, and the creative possibilities are limitless, especially if you're familiar with the color page. Dehancer excels in offering looks that go beyond stock tools, making it perfect for achieving nostalgic Hollywood styles or crafting unique aesthetics. I confidently give it a 5-star rating, and I'm sure the difference it brings to your content will be noticed through increased engagement. Again, there's a link for submissions to Dehancer's Colorist Awards in the description, as well as discount codes and affiliate links, which help support the channel at no cost to you. As always, thank you for watching, and until next time, go capture that once-in-a-lifetime moment.